Let's got it. It's ready to go live. Looks like we're live. Says we're live. Good to be here, everyone. This is Chris Horton, and this is actually so good to do it with a wonderful Brittany Prince, going to talk about her story as a holistic nutritionist, what got Brittany into the field, and the importance and benefits of functional lab testing. It's many people, one of the most common topics asked in the group is, what can I do for gut health? What can I do for SIBO? What can I do for GERD? What can I do for XYZ? And Brittany is an amazing resource for that. So good to have you here and share your story, share what you do and how functional lab testing can, like I mentioned, help support someone on their journey.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so used to being on your side of this and not being the one being interviewed, but this is really cool. And I'm super excited because you are correct. I mean, I would say a good 75% of the questions in the group have something to do with gut health, whether people like understand that that's related or not. You know, when we get a ton of questions about eczema and psoriasis and Hashimoto's, thyroid issue, like it all has to do with gut health. So really excited to be here today. Thank you guys. Happy Wellness Wednesday. If you're here with us live, say hello, drop us a hashtag live, give us a like, boost us in the algorithm here, because as we know, Facebook can be silly. And we need to make sure that people see this, because I think the information that I'm going to share today is going to be super valuable, especially with the holidays coming up. And just so many people are dealing with gut health issues. I mean, I did, that's how I ended up, in this space, was through my own gut health issues. So really excited to be here today, guys. Thank you so much. And thanks, Chris, for interviewing me.
Absolutely. So good. I was kind of not stuttering, but you're so used to being the person that's interviewing and doing that, asking the questions. So I was like, oh, cool. This is my turn to go. My turn to ask questions. It's so good to be here. If anyone has heard Brittany's story before, it's an amazing one. You've been through quite a journey yourself, personally, personally, just say that as much as you can touch more into it. But your health journey and what you've gone through, what you've been able to come through, and really go from having skin concerns and stuff going on in your stomach and gut and so forth, let's bring it lightly, of course, to where you are now, and now being able to help people who have been who are going through what you were going through in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. My story kind of started out, I was a young, mom. I didn't know any better, right? I listened to what the doctor told me, because that was kind of like the idea that I thought we were supposed to do, right? They're a doctor. They know what's best for my health. Now I know that to definitely not be true, at least in the case of most conventional medicine doctors. But after having my daughter, and I had been on birth control prior, I started, being on birth control as a teenager, and was off of it for a little while, then had my daughter and got back on it after that, related or not, when we, sorry.
That's okay. You can go. Sorry about that.
So I started having all of these issues, like the pill wasn't working for me. I did the depot shot. That made me a totally crazy person. So I decided to get an IUD. And it was great at first, no periods. Like I was like, yay. And I seemed fine. And for the first 2 years, it worked, pretty well. I didn't have any issues. And then all of a sudden I started to get reoccurring BV, and my skin started breaking out really bad. And I was gaining weight and I was bloated and I didn't feel good. And at the time, I wasn't exactly taking care of my health either. I was, not eating very good food, a lot of fast food, a lot of processed foods, drinking alcohol, not drinking enough water. I lived on like Monster and Red Bull as a young mom. So, what I put into my body played a huge role in it as well. But I kept asking my doctors, like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, I mean, I had this horrible, horrible cystic acne, these painful cysts on my face, and I still have, the scarring from it. But luckily, my skin is so much clearer now that I went through a gut healing protocol. And, my doctors just wrote it off. And he told me, he goes, oh, well, about 90% of women, their skin gets better on birth control. And I was like, okay, but like mine isn't. Like mine got really bad and I didn't break out as a teenager. I had really, clear skin up until my early 20s. And so they just kept giving me antibiotics, for the BV and then for the acne. Then I got harsh topicals on my face. I got all of these things that, weren't helping me, and they seemed to be making the situation worse. And about that time, I had started going back to school, and I was going to school for radiology. I ended up gaining some weight. I gained extra weight because now not only was I a single mom and working, I was also going to school. So, fast food was a regular, thing for us. It was like, what do you want tonight for dinner? McDonald's, Taco Bell, Wendy's. Those are our options, because I didn't have time to cook, or I didn't think that I had time to cook, but when I prioritized it, I actually did. But so anyways, I gained all this weight and I refused to buy bigger clothes. Like I was like, I'm not doing it, but I was muffin topping out of all my stuff. I did not feel good about myself. I had no energy. I had brain fog. Like I knew I was not healthy. And I told myself, I was like, all right, like a diet isn't going to cut it. Like I really have to change my lifestyle. That I have to. So I ended up taking nutrition as an elective, and I fell in love with nutrition and like how good my body felt. And I was like, I started going to the gym and, I lost all the weight, and my skin started clearing up some, but it still wasn't great. And I was like, wow, like everybody should feel this good, right? Like, why doesn't everybody like eat healthy and work out? Like it's so much better. I ended up getting off my antidepressant medication, my anti-anxiety medication. I felt so much better, and I decided then I was going to go a more holistic route. I got my IUD taken out. I ended up dropping out of the radiology program. I changed my major to nutrition, and I absolutely love what I do. But even though I was like eating healthier, what I realized is that I still had some of the acne. It wasn't near as bad as it had been. But I knew my hormones were still out of balance. I still had the acne. I still had some issues going on, even though I was eating healthy, right? Like, so I was eating whole grains, which in my nutrition program, they told us, right? Like we're looking at the My Plate and the government recommendations, and that's what they wanted us to, tell people. And, I kind of realized through going to some events with the American Dietetics Association, how much politics and money is involved in their recommendations and like what they tell people. And I opted not to become a registered dietitian because I saw what they were doing, right? Like they're recommending milk and they're recommending all these grains, and it's really not good for people's health. And that's because they're sponsored by, the dairy farms and big agriculture and Shamrock and, Cisco and these big food corporations. I mean, the worst spread I've ever had was as a nutrition student going to an event at the American Dietetics Association. There was not a single fruit. There was not a single vegetable. Well, I changed that. There was some fruit in the form of peach cobbler. We had barbecue. We had all these rolls. like nothing for any of the vegetarians or vegans there. I mean, like it was, and it was sponsored. I can't remember if it was Cisco or Shamrock, but it was one of the two. And it was so unhealthy. And then we're listening to these speakers talk, and I'm like, I had already kind of started going down the more natural route. And I'm like, this just doesn't sit right with me. And my teachers were very upset that I didn't apply for the program. And, going through my clinicals and just being in the hospital, like we were giving sick people these trays of food. Like I had to do rotations in the cafeteria. And so I was very familiar with the hospital food. And they're like, oh, you can eat it if you want. And I'm like, I'm not putting that in my body. Like that's disgusting. And we're giving these sick people this food that is not going to help them. Like food is medicine. And the boost and those things. And I'm like, I would not give my sick dying grandma boost. Like, look at the ingredients on here. Like it's gross. And, so I decided to go my own route after school, and I got a job working in a more holistic space as a coach. And I learned so much. Like I learned, oh, wait, like saturated fat isn't bad. And I already kind of knew that, right? But this was a whole different approach and a much more natural and holistic approach in my training with this job. And it really like opened up my eyes. But throughout this time, I'm still kind of dealing with these like digestive issues. I mean, the IBS and the acne. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? Like, I'm eating organic dairy. I'm eating, like organic, like whole grains and all of these things. And I didn't realize that these were actually like very harmful to my body. And, consuming these foods was contributing to my acne, my hormone imbalances, my, GI issues. And so I started like researching, and I'm like, okay, like what can I do? Right. And I already knew a little bit about functional medicine, but I really started like diving into like, Mark Hyman. Part of my training for my job was taking a class about, from Chris Kresser. So started researching, these guys, Dr. Jockers, like, what are they saying about like gut health? And I will say that my education fell so short on gut health, which should have been like the focus of the nutrition program. It should have been like everything stems from the gut. Everything is like related to the gut. And I had one teacher talk about gut health, and in the terms of, she goes, don't anger the tube. You anger the tube, it's going to mess everything else up. And
it makes sense, because when it goes back to many people say that, food is medicine. Of course, food is medicine. Well, when you put in your body, whether it's a healthy food or a inflammatory food, is going to cause an inflammatory reaction in your gut. So when you put good nutrient-dense food, anti-inflammatory foods, it's going to help your body out. Your body's going to digest it properly. It's going to also support other aspects of your body. It's the perspective of, like you mentioned, arthritis. I know Smith, I touched on that last week, or arthritis and autoimmune concerns are inflammatory concerns. So you can take, I spoke to someone, I believe, last week or so, and they're saying, they're looking for ways to support arthritis. And I said, no, somatic effect is great. It's also important to make sure that the person is cutting back on inflammatory foods. When you have intake inflammatory foods, it's going to cause inflammatory reactions in all parts of the body, including your joints, your muscles, and everything else. So it just starts in the gut, because your body digests it and it goes to the gut. Whether it's a good anti-inflammatory food or inflammatory food, it's going to go there. It doesn't go anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like my traditional education fell so short on the importance of gut health. And, throughout my time going to school for nutrition, it was probably like right after I had gotten into the nutrition program, which was a 2-year, program to get my bachelor's. And we were living with my father, who was helping me, take care of my daughter. He watched her when I was at work. He watched her when I was at school. And he had poor health, but mostly poor physical health from, some accidents before I was even born. So I really always knew my dad being in chronic pain. And, but once I started the nutrition program, it got bad for him. But with his gut, right? My dad threw up every day pretty much for 2 years. The last 2 years he was on earth, the whole time I was in the nutrition program, pretty much he threw up almost every day, and he was miserable, and it was really hard to watch. And I was also, really trying to stay focused on, doing all the things that I had to manage in my life with school and getting good grades and being a mom. And, and I was trying to take care of him. I bought a juicer. I started juicing for him because he couldn't hold anything down, but my dad ate like crap. And I would tell him, because by then I had started prioritizing my time better. I would meal prep, I would cook, I was making sure that the whole family was eating a lot healthier. If I cooked something without meat, my dad would be like, where's the meat? And I said, there's plenty of protein in this meal. You don't have to have meat all the time, even though I'm a big believer in eating quality animal protein. But that's kind of how he was. And he really liked these TV dinners, and he ate a lot of, cheese and crackers and things. We used to call it his little happy hour with the dogs. And, every afternoon he would make this plate of cheese, crackers, or quesadillas, or, whatever. And he'd sit there with all the dogs, and, they all eat. And, he ate ice cream almost every day. And so, I was trying to get him to eat better, but he basically had told me, he goes, this is the one last joy I have, right? Is my food. So, he was pretty stubborn. He didn't really want to change it, but the juicing helped a lot. And that worked for about 6 weeks. And I was juicing for him. It helped him hold down things. He quit throwing up. And he had gone to multiple doctors, multiple tests. I mean, they really couldn't find an answer for him, right, in the Western medicine world, because they're doing endoscopies, colonoscopies. They told him, oh yeah, we see a little inflammation, but we can't really figure out what's going on with you. He's throwing up multiple times a day, every day for 2 years. They had him on proton pump inhibitors, different acid H2 blockers. They had him on this one drug that was it was either a PPI or an H2 blocker, but it was also an antipsychotic, and that they give to schizophrenic people. And I remember reading the insert on this, and I was shocked at the side effects and just what was in this drug. And I swear they kept changing his drugs, and it kept making things so much worse for doctors. But after having my doctor, so I started juicing for him. That helped for a while. And I remember at one point he said, honey, you saved my life. And, I really wanted him to feel better, because I would hear him, crying at night, God, please heal me, or please take me. He was miserable. And so fast forward, I finally, I graduate. My dad couldn't even make it to my graduation because he couldn't sit for long enough, without throwing up or just being very uncomfortable. And a month to the day after I graduated, 2 days before my birthday, 5 days before Father's Day, my father could no longer take the pain that he was in, and he took his own life. And so that is really kind of what sparked my gut health journey, even though I had been dealing with, some gut health issues. And then after that, I did get the job, and I started going, the more holistic, route on that, but I'm still struggling with all these issues. And then COVID hits, and I think just the stress of everything, I ended up moving states because the state I was in was super locked down, and I wanted some freedom and to be able to breathe oxygen. And so we moved back to Arizona. I started my business. I was under a lot of stress, right? I was what am I doing? Is the world ending? Everyone's lost their minds. And that's when it really hit me, and I could not tolerate any food. And it got to the point where everything was a run to the bathroom, like a run. Like, you know, we'd be out. I remember like getting coffee or like running errands with my daughter, and I like drink like half of my Starbucks or whatever. I think it was probably Dutch Bros because I don't like Starbucks, but I'm like, oh, we have to go home. Like, we have to go home right now. And she's like, what? Why? And I'm like, because we have to go home, you know, and foods would trigger me like that. Like, you know, or I would feel bloated. And then now looking back on like all the times where I like was bloated or I like didn't feel good, I'm like, oh, it was like I ate this, you know, prior. And so I ended up going through a whole, you know, gut healing protocol. I did testing on myself. I got gut health testing. I did, you know, food allergy testing. I went on an elimination protocol, a really strict one for about 3 months. And then I loosened up a little bit the next 3 months, but I really wanted to make sure I was healed. And wow, what a difference. Like, what a difference it really, really makes in terms of just like your quality of life and how your energy levels, your ability to focus and concentrate on things. Like, gut health affects everything. And now, like, look at my skin. I did eat some cheese on Thanksgiving, so I have a couple little pimples because every time I cheat with Jerry, that happens. But like, I haven't had a giant cyst on my face in years. You know, I feel better, my energy is better, I don't have those digestive issues. Like, you guys, I'm gonna be like, this is probably like way too much TMI, but I used to keep a bottle of Clorox spray next to my toilet so that I could clean up after. Like, I mean, like, it was bad. I was always bloated, I always felt like crap, and it was just no way to live. But I feel like that I had to go through that experience because I already cared a lot about gut health because of my dad. But I feel like I really had to go through that elimination and that healing phase myself so that I know how to like help people, right? Like, because now that's what I do. You know, I help other people going through the same thing that I went through, who are tired of like their doctors not giving them answers or just throwing a medication at them, or you know, having these crazy invasive tests that don't even look at their microbiome, which is like so important. You know, I just had a conversation earlier today with someone from the group who's had multiple tests and still dealing with all these issues. And the doctors are like, well, we can't find anything. So what? She's just supposed to take Parallax the rest of her life? Or, you know, like, oh, eat more fiber. Like, this is their solution. It's insane.
And where fuels the fire at that point.
You know, it's just Western medicine. If you want to heal your gut, like you can't go, like, I mean, you have to go like a functional, natural, you know, approach, whether you decide to, you know, get the lab testing or do like, but they're not going to help you. Like, your doctor, your typical like primary care doctor, even the GI specialists and stuff, like, they're not going to be super helpful, you know. And that's the sad part about, you know, medicine and our medical system, because there's no profit in healthy people. So why would they want you to get better? Like, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely not. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And it's so powerful from not what you went through is horrible, obviously, but where you are now. And I can see your passion. Every time I talk to you, quite often, and even in the group as well, when you do your Facebook Lives, it's really amazing. I can see what you went through, and now you know what it's like to be there. It sucked on many levels, both from the family perspective, or what your father went through, and even what you went through, or your personal life, having to run home because your stomach was grumbling, obviously, to now knowing what it was like, and knowing what that people don't have to live there. They can experience that, but there's another way. There are ways to support their health, well-being, and being able to go about their day and live good and recognize the difference of how stressful events might affect us and then how to handle that. And what we're going to get into in a moment or so, which is testing.
Yeah.
When did you start doing testing on yourself? As far as was that a couple of years ago?
Yes, that was
about that.
That was like the beginning of COVID, couple months into COVID, because that's when I really started reacting to everything. And I was like, I can't live like this. I cut out gluten first. And
Okay.
that improved a lot, especially like my IBS symptoms. That did improve a lot of things, but there was still a lot more that I knew I was missing. And so about a month into the gluten-free diet, I had done, really good. And we went out over to a friend's house to eat. And I was like, oh, what's having one roll gonna do? And I had like a roll with dinner, and oh my goodness, it was horrible. Not only in the bathroom, but just like I got a headache. I had this headache for like 3 days, like a horrible migraine headache. I had joint pain and stiffness. Like I felt like I was 80, and I was like, how did I not like feel this bad physically when I was consuming it every day? But yet, I go, I think it was like 3 weeks, without having any. And then I consume it, and then it has this reaction. And I'm like, oh, it's got to be because my inflammation had gone down so much. Then once I put it back in my body was like, whoa, like, what are you doing? No, don't bring this back. And that's when I was like, all right, like I need to figure out what else is going on. I have to figure this out. And it wasn't like there was like a lot of doctors open, like everything was,
Right.
see at that time. And so I'm like, all right. So I found places where I could order tests myself. I called some companies and I was like, hey, look, like, here's my degree. Like, this is what I do. Like, can I just order, like, can I order this? And so I did, and I had leaky gut. I had, candida overgrowth, definitely had some, dysbiosis, and I was reacting to so many foods. Like my list looked like a Verizon map, like with all the red on the foods.
Wow.
It was not good. And the elimination protocol was not fun either. Like it was hard. And at this time prior, like when I first started my business, it was more about just nutrition and fitness, right? Like that's fresh and fit nutrition. I focused on healthy eating and working out. And then once like going through this gut healing protocol and, really having to sit with like, okay, this is hard for me, someone who has this knowledge, who has this education, who has this background in nutrition, like this process is really hard and it sucks. And I'm like, how many other people are like having to go through this process without the background, without the knowledge, without, and giving up or, trying things that don't work. And so, after going through my process, and there were times like if I didn't plan ahead, like I had to make sure that I had food prepped for myself because there was no going to fast food. There was no going to the drive-through. There was no picking up something quickly. Like I could not eat any of that if I wanted to heal. And I was hell bent on healing because I was so done feeling like that because it had been, off and on for years. And then it was really bad right then. And I was like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I know I've done the research. I can heal this. And there was one night I ended up in my daughter's bedroom on her floor. I was so hungry. I had forgotten to pull the chicken out of the freezer to defrost it. So I like had nothing to cook. And then what I did have to cook would be like, it was going to take me like 30 minutes. I was also trying to intermittent fast. So I was, going like 16 hours without eating. I was so hungry.
Wow.
I was just like, I'm hungry. She's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not okay. I just want food and I can't have anything. And I just want to go to Chipotle. And like, so it was definitely a difficult and emotional experience, but it was so good that I went through that because now I can so relate to my clients. Like, it's not easy and you're gonna struggle. But when you get out on the other side, not only do you know, like, what a badass you are. Like you feel so much better and you feel so much healthier, and it is so worth it. And it's like a temporary time of like some severe literally have it written on my door. I knew there was a package coming. There's a sign on my door that says do not because I didn't know what time the package was going to get here, but apparently the UPS guy can't read. So
no worries.
Sorry about the interruption, everyone. It's where I like totally forgot where it was.
You're talking about you're lying on the floor and then getting better. Realize
it is so worth the short amount of time that you have to be super restrictive. You know, yeah, you're going to go to events and you're not going to be able to eat the cake, and you're not going to be able to go out with the girls and have alcohol and drinks on Friday nights, and you're not going to be able to have the pizza and the wings for a while. Then you heal. And then once you heal, though, you're probably not going to want that stuff anymore anyways, because you're going to have it happen to me, and you're going to eat something like that, and you're going to be like, well, I feel like shit. And then you're going to be like, oh, yeah, you know, and it's all about like figuring out, you know, like I know now, like the things that like bother me. I know the things that I am fine with. I know what's not worth it to me to have, and what I can maybe get away with like having a little bit so I can enjoy it, because food's social, right? Like we should enjoy food. It's delicious, and you can make healthy food delicious. Like it does not have to just be chicken and broccoli and rice. Like, you know, there are so many herbs and spices and healing foods that you can prepare in a delicious way that is not only good for you, but good for your family too. And like, that's really what I try to do, you know, with my clients, is provide them with guides on how to prepare meals so they're not having to make 2 meals during this process, right? Because that's, who's got time for that? Like, I don't have time, you know, to make multiple meals for people at night. Like when I went through my protocol, for the most part, my daughter ate what I was eating, but like I would, you know, get her like something extra, like maybe, you know, yeah, okay, we're having like grass-fed, you know, I'm having some grass-fed meat tonight and some steamed broccoli, but maybe she got like a baked potato with some cheese and some sour cream or something, but I did, you know, like, so there's ways to make it easier on yourself so that you're not having to cook for everybody, and you can kind of tweak their food a little bit, add, you know, make some rice for them or whatever, if they need some carbs, or, you know, however you want to do it, but it doesn't have to be super complicated. You don't have to like have these like 20 ingredient recipes that you're cooking. Like I tell my clients, I'm like, dude, make it simple. You like, herbs and spices are your best friend, because that's going to change the flavors of everything so you don't get bored. So, you know, I can use chicken and I can use my homemade taco seasoning and I can make it spicy. I can use the little Indian spice mix that I make with like curry and turmeric and coriander, and, you know, like, and you can make the same thing 10 different ways so that you're not getting bored, and make it real simple. You want a quality protein on your plate, you want some veggies, and you want some healthy fats. And depending on what kind of protocol you're on, because everybody needs to be individualized, right? Like what works for me is not going to work for Chris. You know, you really have to individualize this approach, because say on my test, if I came back like really high in mold, well, some of my clients that come back with molds, we're not eating rice because rice is really susceptible to mold. We're not eating peanuts. You know, so it really just depends. You have like really high candida growth. You want to cut out fruit for a little bit. You really want to avoid all sugars, right? Because the first step, so I followed that 5R, you know, that 5R protocol. So we want to remove any offenders, which include the bad guys that are living in our gut, you know, whether that's a parasite, whether that's candida, whether that's, you know, just a bad bacteria, whatever that is, H. pylori. Like we want to remove that. And it's a constant battle, right? Like I eat pretty healthy. I mean, I'll admit, you know, like I have my days, like sometimes I don't eat the greatest, or sometimes I'm so busy that maybe my dinner is a protein shake. But it's a high quality protein shake. But you know, we really have, it's a constant battle. We're constantly like bombarded with all of these toxins, all of these chemicals, all of these things that can impact the health of our gut and lead to leaky gut. And then we're susceptible for these infections. And I'm super excited. I just got my results back, and we'll be talking with Mary from Fresh Start tomorrow and talking more about the science, but I just got my results back from that test. And it shows I am a little high in Candida and I'm a little high in H. pylori. And I have been the last couple months. I've been under a little bit more stress than usual, and I have noticed a difference in my digestion. And so it's really important to, know and understand your body. And I think that, that gut healing protocol, like, really allowed me to listen to myself and really get to know, my body and like what makes me feel good. And I've known for a couple months, like, something's a little off here, and so I'm glad that, I got that testing, and now I'm going to be putting myself through a new protocol, to help get rid of that. And we did some food sensitivity testing as well, and some of the same things that I had before, some different things, so we'll see about that. And, it's going to be a constant, battle just based on our environment. But what we can do, we've got to nourish our body properly. We've got to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like, if we want to be healthy, like, there's so many aspects of health, but it really like starts in our gut, especially with the mental health, right? With that gut brain connection. And our gut health affects our mental health, and it leads to inflammation in the brain. And when we look at research, what do we find in the brains of schizophrenics, bipolars, people with depression, anxiety, OCD? It's all inflammatory, and inflammation stems from the gut. So we've got to focus on gut health first. We've got to clean up the gut. Then I think we can start thinking clearly, and then we can start working on a lot of that other, like, emotional stuff, spiritual stuff, right? Because now my journey is, totally different. I'm nourishing my body every day. I'm, eating good foods. I'm taking care of myself. And now I'm working on that emotional and that spiritual, part of my health. And so I think that's really important to understand, but I think we've got to start with the gut,
Absolutely. And many times over. That's so important and beneficial. And I've listened to Dr. Mark Harmon often on his podcast, and I think I heard him say, eat foods that help you make the best decisions. That sounds really simple. It's okay, cool. What does that mean? Well, have a bag of chips or crackers or cheese doodles or something. Now, how do you feel? Maybe like you're drunk, or maybe like you're not really all there. Or have an apple, have some healthy fats with it. You're going to feel much better. You're probably going to think better. Where what kind of decisions do you make when you drink an excessive amount of alcohol, or any alcohol? Or it depends on the person. But it's really simple. Eat foods that are going to help you make the best decisions. You're going to eat the nutrient-dense foods. It's going to support your gut health. You're going to feel good overall. So it goes back to that. And just a really simple as far as the importance of working with a professional, someone that's been there and knows what it's like. I love working out. I've been going to the gym more often. It feels good. I've been actually getting stronger, which is really cool.
Nice.
But I noticed like something is not there. So a couple of weeks ago, I met with a friend who's a personal trainer. He gave me a workout. I did my workout last night that he gave me. I can feel it today much more than I did when I was working out by myself. The punchline is, when I seek professional guidance, who knows that it's like he gave me an outline and a recommendation of what to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's what a nutritionist or a health coach does from that perspective. We make it easy to digest and implement into your life. Just from a overall perspective, personal trainers do their thing. We help you with your nutrition, your body, and your lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually, right before this, I had a call with a woman who runs a local gym who is interested in having me come speak to her members and her coaches. She said, because, I have these trainers, she was, but I have these women that they're not getting results, right? A lot of them have thyroid issues, hormone imbalances, they have, gut health issues. And she's like, we charge a lot of money every month to our clients. So we want them to see good results, right? But they've got to stay in their lane with the personal training aspect of it. And she's like, we really need someone who can come in and talk to our members about nutrition. And, so I'm meeting with her again next week because that is so important. Like, you need a guide and outline, like what happens when our pipe bursts, like we call a plumber. Like, what happens when our car breaks down? We go to the mechanic. But when our body breaks down, we're like, oh, let me Google this. Like it's like, yeah, like everybody tries to like these quick fixes and these detoxes and these parasite cleanses and these skinny teas and like all of this stuff. And we really just have to like take a step back, get a professional. Like, this is your body. We only have one. We only have one. And so we really need to take care of it before it gets so late to that point, where we're dealing with multiple chronic illnesses, where we're dealing with, multiple autoimmune issues, because when you got one autoimmune issue, you will get more. It just happens. Like, your body will continue to attack itself in other places. So before we get to that point, let's get to the root cause. Let's fix these issues, right? Like, so my issue was the leaky gut led to multiple food sensitivities. That is why I had the IBS symptoms. IBS is not a diagnosis. IBS is a set of symptoms. And that means basically your doctor doesn't know what's wrong with you. And they're like, oh, you have IBS. Well, okay, what's causing the irritable bowel, right? And so mine was the leaky gut from the birth control, the antibiotics, multiple food sensitivities that led to like the dysbiosis, the candida overgrowth, right? So when I was able to find that root cause and target those and fix those and then repair my gut lining, I was able to heal, And so we really got to like, do we want to do this now? And do we want to invest now in our health or are we going to wait until we're forced to later? I spoke at an online event earlier this morning, and we were talking about managing diabetes during the holidays. And, one of the things that I talked about was like the obesity and diabetes statistics. And on average, like an obese person, their healthcare cost $1,800 more per year. Right. So if you're obese, you're unhealthy, like your healthcare costs rise. And if you're saying, oh, well, I'm on, Medicare, Medicaid, whatever, like that's just increasing the burden for everyone. And if you are on like Medicare, Medicaid, like your care is not very good. Your care is not going to be great. So, see where you can cut back if like if you're strapped. And I know it's a hard time for people right now. And these tests, like the tests that I offer, like they're not covered by insurance, but you've gone to multiple doctors, you've used up your insurance, you've paid the co-pays, you've paid for the, the prescriptions, you've spent hours at the doctors, you've had stuff shoved down your throat and up your butt, and you're still no better. Like, invest in what's going to help, invest in the testing that's going to look at your microbiome to tell the practitioner that you're working with what is going on in your gut. And you get to the root and you fix it. And then, hey, guess what? You live the rest of your life happier and healthier. Because even though those things like came up like higher on my test, like, and we all have H. pylori and candida, but when they get out of control, that's when you have an issue. Like, I don't have any symptoms, but my levels were elevated. So I'm going to address that now before it gets to a point where, I am feeling really bad. I am like having those crazy sugar cravings because my body is like overgrown with yeast. So we have to address the things now, because you're not going to get any better on your own. There's not a magic pill. There's not like anything that's just going to boom, you're going to wake up and you're going to feel better. Like, you try doing this on your own. If you've been trying and you've gone to doctors and like, you're still no better, like you need to find a professional that will work with you to find the root cause and help you with a solution to get you to where you should be and where you want to be.
It's going to benefit you now, next year, following year and going to pay many dividends, as we've all probably seen the graphic. Our liver turns over every 28 days, and then different parts of our body turn over every couple of months or so. So you can really support the liver, and it's going to be really freaking healthy, or you can continue to make it, cause inflammation. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is real. So you can not be an alcoholic or drink alcohol, but still have a fatty liver.
Yeah.
So it might affect you one way or the other, even if you don't drink alcohol. Not
Yeah.
just childhood alcohol, obviously.
We've got kids as young as like 8, 9 years old now with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease because high fructose corn syrup is so damaging to the liver. Like if you take away anything from this, like do not consume anything with high fructose corn syrup. Like it is so toxic for our liver and causes so many issues. And we have these young kids, and it's in everything, not just soda. Look at the back of bread. You will be shocked. High fructose corn syrup. A lot of times it's like second ingredient. Ketchup, other condiments. Like you've got to learn to read labels, but what's better than reading labels is eating food without labels. We want to avoid as much as possible those boxes, bags, and barcodes. And we want to fuel our body with good foods and healthy foods that work for our bodies. And that's, totally individualized. Like not all things are going to be good for you, even though they're considered healthy, right? One of the things I'm kind of sad about on my test yesterday was coconut products. I use a lot of coconut products. And coconut is so beneficial, and it's very beneficial for gut health. And what's surprising is that also showed up prior, and I cut out coconut for 6 months, and I was like, when I introduced it, I don't have any issues with it like I do with the reaction with gluten, or like I know when I cheat with dairy, I'll get like a little pimple or something, but I don't feel anything when I consume coconut, but it's causing an inflammatory response in my body. And so I'm still not sure whether or not I'm going to cut that out fully, or I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, how am I going to make my soups? I'm like, I use coconut milk as a replacement for everything.
Do you recommend as a precautionary or as a proactive measure, people do it, say, once a year, a couple times a year to do the testing? What kind of protocol do you recommend for finding out what's going on and then implementing it as well? So it's very beneficial, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it changes, our gut microbiome changes all the time, and which changes what foods we're reactive, to as well. So, I mean, if you could do this annually, ideally, like that would be great, but at least like every few years, especially if you start to feel some symptoms. If after you go through a gut healing protocol, you're good for a couple years, but then like I said, like with me, right? Like, it's been a couple years, and I did the last couple months under some stress, I started to notice a difference in my digestion. So I wanted to get, tested again. So, I think if you're feeling that, it's a good idea, check where you're at. Just like you go to your, you go to your doctor and get your physical, which I don't even know what they do in those, like, what they're like, oh, your cholesterol's high, here's some drugs. But, if you can, ideally, because like I said, it's not often covered by insurance, ideally annually, at least every other year would be great. If not, definitely when you start to feel some issues, reach back out to your practitioner and be like, hey, maybe I got a parasite, maybe I got something going on, like, because we're all susceptible to it. I mean, we're living in a toxic environment, and we can do everything that we can, right? Like, we got to do all these things to promote our health, but there are still outside factors that affect us that we don't have control over. So, really trying to control those factors as much as possible, like air filtering and, just not using toxic products, eating organic, because glyphosate is a huge contributor to leaky gut. And I have a glyphosate test too. So if you want to get tested for glyphosate, I did that a few months ago and was super happy to know. I was worried about what my results were going to be on that one. And I had I think it was like 3, 4, like it was so negligible, like the amount of glyphosate that was in my system. So I was super happy about that because they've tested, the environmental working group did that test several years ago with the cord blood on babies. And I think it was like 270 different chemicals and toxins in the cord blood. So these babies, before they're even born, are already exposed to, I know it's over, it might be 270, 280, like all those different chemicals. So we're starting out not healthy.
It's too much.
Yeah. We're being poisoned for profit. So we have to do what we need to do to keep ourselves as healthy as possible. Get your gut in order because it's going to make a huge difference. It's going to help you too when we're dealing with, flu season, when we're dealing with the thing that everybody's been talking about for years. Like I had it, you had it, right? But because we came from a place of health, very mild symptoms. For me, it was 4 days of me feeling like I had a head cold. I will say the worst part about it was the post-viral brain fog. That was, I never experienced anything like that before. And that's common with this particular thing. But I guess that's what a bioweapon will do. And so it puts you at a better, even if we can't control all the things, but you're in a better place to be able to protect your body and deal with these things. I mean, we get posts all the time, I'm constantly getting sick. I had, what can I do for my immune system? Clean up your gut. That's going to be the best thing you can do for your metabolism, for your, for your immune system, for your digestion, for everything. Clean up your gut, start with the gut, and then you're going to start working on all the other things. But you got to start with gut health.
So with testing, and it close out in a couple minutes or so, how does it work? I believe you said it's snippets of your hair, and then stool testing and so forth. How does it work?
Yeah, so I have a couple different options, and the Fresh Start testing is what we'll be talking about tomorrow. And I'm bringing Mary in live in the group. This is something new that I am doing with my clients now, but typically I do a GA map test. This is a diagnostic test. It is a stool test. It tells you so much information about what is going on in your gut. And it's kind of gross. I'm not going to lie. You kind of have to scoop your poop and you got to pick different parts of it. And then you send it into the lab. And then about 4 weeks later, I get the results, go over the results and create your customized plan to help you address those things. But it tells me, the types and amounts of good and bad bacteria. It tells me if you have H. pylori, yeast, fungal overgrowth, parasites, checks for autoimmune markers, looks for inflammation, so I can see if you have leaky gut, all of these things. It tells me so much information about what is going on in the gut to create a protocol. And then I think it's important too that we figure out those food triggers, right? What foods, instead of guessing, doing this long elimination diet process, because the elimination is already hard enough on itself. And then if you're eating, say for me, I cut out coconut before, but say I kept eating that because I knew it was healthy and I didn't test that I had an issue with coconut. I could have been just creating more inflammation and not able to heal. So I think the food, sensitivity testing, food allergy testing is really, really important. So typically I do a blood test, which measures IgG and IgE response. But now with the Fresh Start testing, so they have some tests, and like I said, Mary will be going more into depth about this tomorrow. So I'm excited to bring that to you, but it's a hair test. So and they have a special, and it's not like Everlywell, because I know those are very inaccurate. They do have a special technology that's been used in Europe for over 20 years now, that they have now brought, that Fresh Start brought to North America. And so it's like a biomagnetic frequency thing, and it's testing against your hair. So, it shows these different food sensitivities. It shows, the intestinal dysbiosis. They have a mineral one, as well. And so we'll learn more about that tomorrow. But, typically, in my practice, like I've used the GI map test and the blood test for the food allergies. And it really tells you a lot. And then from that GI map test, though, there might be some things that like set alarms off for me on that. And there might need to be some additional testing. I've had clients where I'm like, oh, okay, these markers are really high. You have mold. So we need to get an organic acids test. We need to get a mycotoxin profile so that I can create the proper protocol. So we know what we're fighting here, because mold can be very difficult to get rid of. And you'd be really surprised. A lot of people have mold. Candida is basically a mold. It's a yeast, but there are some other molds that are nasty.
Thank you so much. And it's like we said in the beginning, we get maybe 2 or 3 questions a day on this, at the minimum or so. So it's really beneficial. And there's no one size fits all prescription, not prescription in the medical term, but in approach in a sense, obviously. So it's all about us. We are all bio-individual unique. So we have to find what works well for us. Like Brittany said, something that might work well for her, different from me, different from everyone else in the group, based on where we live, our ethnicities, our backgrounds, and so forth. So we really have to find out what works best for us, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where working with a professional, really comes in handy. It's not a one size fits all meal plan. It's not a one size fits all supplement protocol. Like, you got to find what works for you, because there was another question about SIBO earlier in the group, and she's like, I tried, taking a probiotic and it just made me really gassy. It made me worse. Like, well, yeah, because if you have SIBO and you already have this bacterial overgrowth in your small intestine, you go throw more bacteria in there, even though it's good bacteria, it's going to start fighting in there and you're going to feel real uncomfortable. So you want to eliminate that bad bacteria first, re-inoculate step 3 in the 5-part, protocol. So, you really got to do it in order. And if you don't remove all the things, you're not going to fully heal. So that's why, like, getting to the root of what's causing it, you've got to remove all of those factors, whether that's medication, whether that's stress, whether that's, food, bad bacteria, parasites, whatever that is. You've got to remove all those things and then do your gut healing protocol. But if you don't remove those, you're not gonna be able to fully heal. So that's why getting some testing, getting to the root cause of what your issues are, and working with a professional is so important. I mean, this is your health. Like, we can't play around with this. This is not like, oh, now I'm going to try this. Now I'm going to try that. Like, this is your body. Like, there's nothing more important than our health. Like, think about, like, our children, our grandchildren, like, do we want to live a good quality life, or do we want to be like most people in America now? Overweight, unhealthy, multiple chronic diseases. No, thank you. I don't want to be normal. I'll be my weird hippie self with my herbs and, all my natural stuff, and living the healthiest life that I can, right? Like, I can only control so much, but I'm doing my part for me.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome, and it's so good to see you, doing what you do, and your passion really shows. It's been awesome, especially when you do this Facebook Live. It shows, obviously, and then when we do it tomorrow too, you'll be able to share more of your story, not more of the story, but just kind of emphasize that what you've gone through, the importance of testing, and how that can benefit someone. It's overwhelming. Like I said, I was going to the gym. It seemed like I was doing well. I was like, I'm not really getting anywhere. But when I sought out the help, and it's not about me, but it's about the help and the resources that are available to help you, because you're not alone. And you can get on a long road to nowhere when you're doing it on your own. So a long and winding road, as the Beatles say. So there are resources that are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for interviewing me, Chris. This has been great, everyone. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow, same time. We'll be talking to Fresh Start Labs and Mary Quinn. So bye, guys.
As always, feel free to reach out to Brittany or myself with any questions. We'd love to help you.
Absolutely. Take care.